Yeah. So when you talk about something that is uncomfortable and painful, you want to be seen and heard and met with presence and compassion first. The reason your body is tensing up is because the strategy that the other person is using to contribute to your well-being in their minds is not aligned with what it is that you're actually needing in that moment. They, at the speed of light, have decided, because this is how we're socialized and culturally indoctrinated, that when somebody has a problem, the best way to help them is to fix their problem. If somebody tells you they're in pain, the best thing to do is to tell them why they're in pain so that they can learn to do something differently, and then they don't have to be in pain. So we want to understand two things. That does not work, and it's well intended. So when your body tenses up around it, that is information for you that there's a misattunement and a misalignment. And now you have the dilemma you were just asking me about, which is, oh, what do I do in this moment when there's something that I'm needing? There's a cultural default way that people have learned to try and help that doesn't actually work. What do we do in those moments to wake everybody up gently without it being disapproval or correction, and try to get into more alignment of what it is that will work for us? For me, when I am looking for the good reason why somebody did something, so for example, somebody is giving me all kinds of advice and strategies when that is not what I'm needing, my remembering that it's well intended is to help me, not to help them. And that's for my benefit. That's not because I'm trying to excuse someone or enable something, or it's not about them in that moment, just as a point of like, why would we do that? Why would we remember that they're trying to contribute to my well-being? It will help my nervous system be less stressed out when my perception is, oh, you're trying to help me. And if my nervous system is less stressed out by it, because I see what you're trying to do, it will be easier for me to find language to help you do what you're trying to do than if I can't take in the good intention and I only see wrongness. Because then what's going to happen in me is any invitation into a conversation is going to be edgier because I'm not receiving the good intention. I'm judging the tragic strategy. And then this is why it gets like a hall of mirrors for us, where we're like, wait, who's doing the disapproving? So there are just some very subtle perception shifts and very nuanced pieces of like, um, like we're not excusing people by seeing their good intentions. We're using their good intentions to help resource ourselves and them to be more attuned so that we can align our strategies with the intentions. So there's going to be a difference when I say, oh my goodness, thanks for trying to help me. What I think I'm needing right now is just a lot of presence and empathy and a little bit of compassion. Can we sit there first? And then you're going to find out from the other person if they have the capacity for that or not.
Yeah.
They're either going to be grateful and shift and be like, oh, yeah, of course, tell me more. Or they're going to say, they're going to double down on their tragic strategy and they're going to get brittle and they're going to get more braced. And then, oh, they don't easily provide this thing. Now I have more data, but that still tells me more about them than about me. I'll just tie it up with a little bow that when we talk about fixing as disapproval, when I'm using that phrase, I don't know how other people are using it, but when I'm using that phrase, what I'm trying to point to is if we jump in too quickly to fix something, whether we're doing it or receiving it, let's talk about the one who's doing it. I see somebody in distress and I want to give them some good advice. I want to tell them what will fix it. Well intended as that may be, the thing that comes across to the other person is something is wrong, in parentheses, with you. I'm helping from a power position, which is that I know better. And if you just did what I was doing, you would feel better. And there can be very subtle, nuanced energies of blaming the victim in fixing. And so we want to be very, very careful with any kind of teaching, advice giving, you should just do this, have you tried that? It can be very powerful when it is consented to and asked for. But if we jump in with that as our first thing, we're often missing the thing that would actually help, which I think, as you so beautifully illustrated, is very often presence, empathy, care, slowing down, being there. And part of that is life is painful. There is no escaping the fact that life is painful. We are never going to fix enough things that life will stop being painful. So, one of the most relational things that we can do is to be with each other in the painful parts of our lives. And when we're so quick to fix, it's like saying, I disapprove of anything that is painful or causes suffering, make it go away. And I'm going to try and make it go away, and you should make it go away. And then something is wrong. And we miss being together in the things that are painful, which actually helps decrease the pain. So those are my just random thoughts to tie a little bow on the original question.
What do you say as the other person?
Oh, okay. Which one? Which other person?
The one who's trying to help and it's fixing.
You can
You don't.
start with a very easy one. You can start with, what would you like from me right now? Do you want to be helped? Do you want to be hugged? Do you want to be heard? The other thing you can do is you can always begin with a classical NVC style, like empathy guess. And I don't mean it like classical, actually, I mean naturalized. But what I mean by that is it sounds like you're feeling blah, 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 and that you might be needing blah, blah, blah. Is that true? When in doubt, go for empathy first. And you can also ask for consent. If you're on the other end, you can say, as I hear you saying this, the part of me that wants to give you so much advice and strategies and teaching and all of my experiences with this is really, really loud. Do you want to hear from her yet or not?
Thank you.
Sorry. You're welcome. You're
Thank you.
welcome. Catherine, clarifying question?
Yes. What do you do with the other person, lack of empathy? You understand that that person does not understand. So you're left with a one-sided relationship. So how do you nurture yourself?
Yeah, you go and find other relationships that are reciprocal and you fill up there. You're asking such a profoundly important question about seeing who people are and letting them be where they are. You know, one of the practices here is not making one person our strategy for getting a need met. It's about, I really need some empathy, and I know which people in my life I can go to who will very naturally and in a very rich and fortifying way provide me with empathy. I also know which people in my life, in a very not rich and non-fortifying way, will absolutely tell me what to do. That's really about knowing who people are. So one part is, if you have somebody in your life who's not empathic, do not expect them to give you empathy. Now, the gray area here is sometimes we're with somebody who just is doing a default thing and they're very empathic, but they're just kind of in a different consciousness and they're kind of giving advice. Then we can always, if this is somebody that you know has the capacity for empathy and likes being empathic, you can just redirect them. You can just say, oh, hold on, hold on, hold on. I actually just need some empathy right now. And if that person is empathic, they'll shift gears and be empathic. The people who do not have the capacities for empathy online also tend to be more defensive about an invitation to attune. And whatever it is that you're asking for, the other person will show you who they are. And then your job, our job on the receiving end is to believe people when they tell you who they are. And it could be, this is where I am today, and try me this weekend, I would be different. But if I go to somebody right now and they are short and curt, it could be that they are tired, they are sleepy, they are in pain, they are under-resourced, and today is not the day they cannot be empathic. It's not a personality trait. And so then I'm going to believe that I don't have what you need right now. And my way of loving them is seeing them for what they can and can't give me, and working with that, not trying to project onto other people who I think they should be, and then trying to mold them into who I need them to be. Do you see what I'm pointing to there, Catherine, or no?
Yes, I do. It's a dissatisfying relationship, though, with that one person who is not able to provide empathy.
Yeah.
So in that case, I just simply need to find it from other people and just
Yes.
know that my relationship with this one person will always be dissatisfying.
On the empathy level, yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Make it a physical problem for clarity. If I am, if somebody in my family is in a wheelchair and cannot run, that's not going to be my marathon running buddy. That's just not what that person is going to be able to offer me. I mean, they might come along with me in other ways, but if I'm looking for somebody who runs marathons with me and trains and goes for jogs with me in the morning, I'm never going to ask that person to do it, because I know I see them for who they are. Doesn't mean we can't have a deeply meaningful relationship in lots of other ways, but I'm not going to get a marathoning run. Do you see what I'm saying? If make it a physical issue,
Yes.
because a personality disorder is generally, if it really is a personality disorder, it's calcified. It's not likely to ever change. So then the most compassionate and loving thing you can do is work with someone as they are and stop projecting onto them who we wish they were. How is that landing?
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome.